There are stories that begin in struggle and rise into beauty, and there are others that begin in beauty, only to reveal the darkness hiding beneath it. This is the story of Sophia Lane, a woman who thought she had found a fairy tale, only to discover that sometimes love is the most elegant form of control. Sophia grew up on the east side of Chicago, in a small apartment where trains rattled the windows and dreams felt distant but not impossible. Her mother worked 2 jobs. Her father was a memory that faded long before she learned what stability felt like. Yet Sophia had determination stitched into her bones. She believed that life could be different, that with enough will she could climb her way out of ordinary and into something remarkable. After college, she moved to New York City with a camera, a portfolio, and a hope that refused to die. She took odd modeling gigs, waited tables, lived off instant noodles, and sent half her paycheck back to her mother. Every night she'd stare at the skyline and whisper promises to herself. One day I'll be somebody. That one day came sooner than she expected. At a charity gala she had been invited to by chance, Sophia met Alexander Stone, the billionaire tech visionary whose face appeared on magazine covers and whose company shaped the modern world. He carried power the way some men carried perfume, subtle, intoxicating, inescapable. When their eyes met across the room, something inside her stilled. From that night forward, her life became a whirlwind. Alexander's attention was overwhelming. Bouquets larger than her apartment, dinners beneath crystal chandeliers, weekend getaways in private jets. He said she inspired him, and she was different. For a girl who had spent her life unseen, those words felt like light pouring into dark corners. Within months, she was living a life she'd once only seen in glossy magazines. Silk dresses, ocean-front villas, photographers who captured her laughter as if it were the rarest thing in the world. When Alexander proposed beneath a canopy of roses on a Manhattan rooftop, she thought she had won the lottery of love. The wedding was televised perfection, a glass chapel in Aspen, snowflakes drifting like confetti. The richest of the rich gathered to witness the union of power and beauty. The world adored them, but what no one saw that day was how quickly perfection can become a prison. In the weeks after the wedding, they became the couple everyone wanted to see. Grace and power walking hand in hand. At their first public event together, cameras flashed like lightning as she stood beside him in diamonds and designer silk. Their smiles were flawless, their hands intertwined, the wedding band still gleaming under the lights. To the world it was a picture of devotion. To her it still felt like love, though somewhere deep inside a quiet unease had already begun to whisper. At first it was charming. The way Alexander wanted to protect her, guide her, make her life easier. He said she didn't need to work anymore. He said her job was to enjoy life. He'd picked out her clothes for events, advised her on which friends were good influences. She mistook control for care, mistook restriction for devotion. Soon she realized that every decision in her world flowed through him. Her social media passwords, her phone, her schedule, so all monitored for safety. Security guards shadowed her. Cameras appeared in every hallway of their glass-walled mansion. When she wanted to visit her mother, there were excuses about business, security, timing. Sophia's days were filled with beauty, but drained of meaning. Morning yoga overlooking the ocean, fittings for gowns she didn't choose, charity appearances arranged by his PR team. Her laughter was rehearsed, her silence expected. And little by little, the girl who had once chased dreams began to disappear behind the woman everyone else admired. Nights became the hardest. Lying beside him, she would stare at the ceiling, hearing only the hum of hidden machines, the security system that watched even as she slept. Her reflection in the mirror grew foreign. Flawless skin, designer diamonds, but eyes that no longer glowed. She started to write again. Small, secret notes on scraps of paper tucked beneath a loose floorboard in her dressing room. Each line was a fragment of truth, a reminder that she still existed beneath the layers of performance. It rained the morning she finally saw her life for what it was. Alexander had flown to Europe for a conference, leaving her alone in the sprawling penthouse. With no one watching, she wandered through the rooms barefoot, the cold marble pressing against her skin. The house felt hollow, echoing with the ghosts of her own compliance. At the window, she looked down at the city and realized she no longer belonged to herself. Her every choice, her every breath, had been absorbed by the man who promised to love her. Her privacy was gone. Even her phone had become his instrument of control, always watched, always traced. That afternoon, she opened her hidden journal and wrote one sentence in trembling ink: "I am living in a beautiful cage." From that moment, awareness began to grow like a spark searching for oxygen. She noticed everything. The way his staff reported her movements, the way the housekeeper flinched when he spoke, the way he disguised control as concern. She began memorizing his routines, observing the patterns of his power, collecting tiny moments of independence. The spare key she kept hidden, the cash she quietly saved from charity stipends. For months she prepared in silence. She smiled when he looked her way, but inside she was building a plan. One dawn, as the ocean mist curled against the windows, Alexander's private jet lifted off for San Francisco. Sophia stood in the doorway of their bedroom, heart pounding so loudly she feared the walls would hear it. She dressed in jeans and a plain white shirt, clothes that didn't belong to the curated life he had chosen for her. She left her wedding ring on the dresser beside a note that said nothing at all. Through the service elevator she descended, a ghost in her own home. The guard at the gate assumed she was one of the staff leaving early and lifted the barrier without a glance. By sunrise she was gone. The train south carried her farther than she'd ever been from him. She watched the skyline recede until it became nothing but memory. When she stepped off in a small coastal town, the air smelled of salt and freedom. She rented a single room above a bakery. The owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes, offered her coffee and asked no questions. Sophia began working there quietly, earning enough to eat and to think, rediscovering what peace sounded like. Each morning she rose before dawn to walk along the beach. The sand was cold under her feet, but it grounded her, reminding her that she was real, alive, and free. She painted again, using leftover cardboard and cheap brushes. Her hands, once manicured for parties, now carried the scent of dough and paint. With every brushstroke, she reclaimed pieces of herself she thought were gone forever. Months slipped by, and with them, the weight of her old life. The headlines still occasionally mentioned Alexander Stone, his acquisitions, his philanthropy, the mystery of his missing wife. But Sophia didn't read them. She no longer belonged to that world. Then, one spring morning, a customer noticed one of her small paintings drying near the bakery's window. A burst of color shaped like a bird breaking from its cage. The customer bought it, then returned with a friend. Within weeks, her art covered the walls. Encouraged by this, Sophia opened a small online store under her maiden name, Sophia Lane. Her paintings, raw, emotional, alive, found their way into homes across the country. People saw hope in her colors, strength in her brushwork. She had become an artist of freedom without ever intending to. Eventually, her story reached the media. An article titled, "The Woman Who Walked Out of Gold," went viral. Reporters discovered her past, but this time the world didn't see a runaway wife. They saw a survivor. Sophia didn't hide. She gave interviews not to expose him, but to illuminate control disguised as love. She spoke softly, with the calmness of someone who had already made peace with her scars. With the proceeds from her art, she founded the Open Door Project, an organization dedicated to helping women reclaim their independence after emotional captivity. The foundation offered counseling, education, and small grants for new beginnings. The same kind of beginning she once fought for barefoot in the rain. Then came the day she was invited to speak at the International Women's Summit in Los Angeles. Standing backstage, she listened to the murmur of thousands waiting to hear her story. The woman who once couldn't speak without fear now stood ready to inspire. When she stepped onto the stage, the lights were bright but gentle. She told her story from the heart, of the girl who mistook control for love, of the cage wrapped in gold, and of the quiet courage it takes to choose oneself. Her voice trembled only once. When she spoke of the morning, she left everything behind, but as she reached the end, it grew strong, a steady flame that refused to die. When the applause rose, it sounded like the ocean, endless, alive, and free. In that moment, Sophia smiled the truest smile she had ever known. She had not only survived, she had transformed. As she walked off the stage, she whispered to herself, "He controlled my life 24/7. But the day I chose myself, I became richer than he ever was." Somewhere far from the applause, Alexander watched the woman he once controlled standing before the world. Fearless, untouchable, free. Every article, every headline carried her name, not his. He tried to reach her. Letters, calls, messages through lawyers. But silence and divorce papers was her only answer. For the first time, the man who once owned everything couldn't command forgiveness. And in that silence he finally faced what he had destroyed, the love that could have saved him, if only he had known how to let it breathe. Freedom, she realized, isn't found in mansions or money. It's found in the quiet decision to be who you are, without permission. And somewhere, in the rhythm of her heartbeat, Sophia Lane knew that she had finally come home. To herself.